Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Danielle Furman. I am the YLD liaison between um, the estate planning and fiduciary law section of the NCBA. And today we're going to kind of try to highlight some of our younger attorneys in the area that have done some incredible trailblazing so far. So it's my honor to present to you guys three great folks from across our state. So we have, let's see, I was going to go in alphabetical order. I miraculously booked an A, B, and C. So we've got Adia Cavanis, Butch Siegel, and Campbell Tarpey. And so I'll let them give a very brief overview of, who they are, what their firm is, and then we'll get into a little bit more details on their path to getting to where they're at right now. Just a little background for you guys on myself. I am an estate planning attorney at Cary Estate Planning in Cary, North Carolina. I practiced at other firms in the area prior to this, and then also a little bit in the DMV area. So I'm regularly practicing in 5 different states, but all in estate planning. So this is my bread and butter, and these are three of my newer colleagues that have really impressed me. So I wanted to just kind of spotlight them and let you guys hear about their experiences. So without further ado, we'll do brief introductions, and we'll start with Adia.
Hi, everybody. So as Danielle was saying, my name is Adia Cavanis. I am an attorney at Johnston Allison and Horde in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm part of their Trust and Estates group. I'm originally from North Carolina, right in the center of the state in the Piedmont, a small town called Ramsor. And I went to NC State for undergrad, Texas A&M for law school, and I've been practicing law for about a year and a half.
Butch.
Hey, so I'm Butch Siegel. I'm originally from Huntsville, Alabama. Go Trash Pandas. That's our minor league baseball team. They look like raccoons in a trash can. Yep. Uh, I went to Elon Law, graduated in 2021. I was taken on as an associate at a law firm serving businesses in the event planning industry. So in practice, I was talking about contracts and business entity formation with everyone from DJs for E-Network to wedding planners doing $500,000 weddings every other weekend. And then I got good at explaining legalese and I got to start my own firm last summer. So Butch Law, butchlaw.com, Butch underscore law on Instagram because some guy has an Instagram for his dog as Butch Law and has since 2010. Oh, do the underscore if you want to find me. And I provide estate planning to residents of the Piedmont Triad area.
Campbell.
Fantastic. Well, my name is Campbell Tarpey. I am depending on how you phrase it, resident of North Carolina, right? I've lived and grew up in Apex, North Carolina. Went to Campbell University for most of my, not to confuse anybody, but went to Campbell University for most of my education, actually all of it. Spent way too long there. And when I came out from a myriad of experience across a couple of banks, I see a fellow First Citizens worker here, so we love that keeps strong and going. But throughout the banks, I joined Cary Estate Planning here for the last almost 3 years now. Actually, no, 2 years. 2 years. I'm starting my third year here at Cary Estate Planning. I'm a probate attorney.
Awesome. So you guys will hear throughout this panel that all three of these folks are fully entrenched in this field, but have come into it for entirely different reasons, through entirely different pathways. And that's kind of what I wanted to highlight in this panel. There's no one right way to enter this practice area, but a lot of times we are met with barriers that, when we're looking on LinkedIn, it says 5+ years of experience or must have an LLM or things like that. The reality of the situation is a lot of us younger folks just haven't had time to do those things yet. And so, how do you break into these positions? And all three of these folks, you'll hear, have kind of done some trailblazing on their own to really make themselves seen and get in the door, even on positions that weren't posted for them. And so, this is something that, we just kind of want to give you guys the opportunity to understand how they got where they did. And we're going to leave time for questions at the end. You can always reach out to us too. But without further ado, we're just going to keep going ABC order. And I'm going to pass it on to Adia to kind of talk about her path to her current position, why she got in this particular area, this practice, this particular role, and kind of give us some, background on how she got where she is. So Adia, if you wouldn't mind just stating again where you're at now at the beginning so everyone can kind of understand what that path's going to look like.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I am in the Trust and Estates Department at Johnston, Allison, and Horde, which is, I think, one of the biggest estate planning groups in the state, if not the biggest estate planning practices. But I, being from a rural county of North Carolina, did not know a ton of attorneys growing up. I went to NC State for undergrad, and I took a semester off before I started there. In that semester off, I job shadowed because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I job shadowed a public defender for 1 or 2 days, and I fell in love with the practice of law just from that one experience. So let that sink in. I don't know if you could call it love. It might just be like it was very interesting and I didn't have anything else going on. And so then I went into NC State. I ended up majoring in communication, public relations, and a minor in international studies. I studied abroad. And then my senior year at NC State came along during COVID, and I was trying to figure out what is it that I want to do. I'm not sure, but I do remember thinking, law school might be a good fit for me. And so I started the application process very late in the game just because I was blissfully ignorant and did not know what going to law school entailed or what being a lawyer truly even looked like. So I ended up applying, I think. My applications went in like February or March, and I got waitlisted at every school I applied to, pretty much. And so that was definitely like a wake up call for me that I was going to probably have to take a year off and then reevaluate. I ended up getting a call from Texas A&M. I'm a North Carolina girl, so I did not intend to ever leave the state of North Carolina. And the dean of admissions said, "Hey, I'm looking at your application. It's great. Why did you apply in March?" And I explained to him that I was going to be a first generation lawyer. I'm still learning the ropes a lot, and there's a lot for me to learn. He ended up offering me a position off the wait list during that call, and he gave me a great scholarship, in-state tuition waiver, and it just made more sense for me to go to Texas A&M than it was for me to wait another admission cycle to try again for Chapel Hill in-state tuition. It ended up being cheaper than in-state tuition at Chapel Hill. So I headed down to Texas A&M with my now fiance, and we lived down there for 3.5 years. During law school, I tried every type of law possible. Going into law school, I thought that there was family law, criminal law, and something else. That's how ignorant I was to the practice of law. But I quickly learned that, there's tons of different practice areas and you can find your niche. And so I tried as many areas as I could. I did a transactional internship my 1L summer. I did, and that was my first taste of trust and estates, and I really loved that. It reminded me of a time when I worked in a florist all through undergrad and high school, and I got to work with families of the deceased through that, and that was a really special experience and allowed me to, talk with people through difficult situations. And when I was practicing trust and estates that first 1L summer, I realized that there's a lot in common with handling sticky family situations or tough conversations in trust and estates that reminded me of that time working in the florist. And so I really liked it, but I kept exploring. And I did a family law clinic. I knew that wasn't for me. I did an externship at the Department of Justice U.S. Attorney's Office in Dallas, and I knew that was not for me. I did litigation. I even got a job offer in litigation, but I knew that ultimately that wasn't going to be right for my mental health. both. So I knew I wanted to be transactional, trust and estates. And I knew as a North Carolina girl that I wanted to be back close to family in North Carolina. So I started applying for jobs. My career services wasn't the most helpful in that. So I had to cold email probably 20 firms across the state of North Carolina. One of the firms I cold emailed was Johnson Allison and Hord, and at the time, it didn't, that it didn't work out. But I was able to get placed at a firm in Greensboro, North Carolina, a small and mid-sized firm, about 30 to 35 attorneys. And it was a great place for me to start and build my initial skills as a practitioner. I was in their business, tax, and estate planning practice area. But Greensboro just wasn't the right fit for me and my fiance. And so we started kind of looking at broader opportunities. And I kind of started putting my name out there for different applications. I saw on LinkedIn that you could do like quick apply with some recruiters and different things like that. And so just trying to see what was out there, I quick applied on LinkedIn with a job posting that said it was in Charlotte, trusted estates attorney, looking for somebody with 3 to 5 years of experience. Well, at that point, I only had 8 months of experience, but I knew that if I could just get in front of them for an interview, I could wow them. And so I put my name forward, and it ended up being a recruiter that had posted that. And so the recruiter reached out to me, said, I looked at your resume, I looked at your bio and stuff like that, and I think that you could be a good fit, but you don't meet the requirements for this position. And so he and I chatted, and he was like, I think you have the interview skills, the interpersonal skills needed for a position like this. It's a great firm. It's Johnson Allison Hord. I'm going to put your name forward. I'm not sure if they'll be willing to interview you or not. So he put my name forward. They interviewed me. I really liked the partners who initially interviewed me. It was like a Zoom call. And then after that Zoom call, they extended me an opportunity to do an in-person interview at their office in Charlotte. So I came down to Charlotte and did a interview with them. It was like 5 partners on one side of this giant conference table and me. And luckily that hadn't been the first time that that had happened to me, so I was kind of prepared for it. But it was a good interview process. They asked me some great questions. And then after that, they had all of the available associates during the time of my interview come in to talk to me about what work-life balance and firm culture was at Johnson Allison and Hort. So it gave me the opportunity to ask the firm associates questions and for them to kind of do a vibe check on me. I guess the vibe checked out because about a week later, I got an offer from Johnson Allison Hort, and I moved to Charlotte in July and started at the end of July with the firm. And so I've been here for about 7 months now and am really loving it. So trust, and now I'm doing like pretty much exclusively complex estate planning, some estate administration, and because we have an elder law attorney in practice with our group, I'm also getting to dabble in elder law, special needs law, guardianship stuff. So I'm learning from kind of the best of the best. We have a lot of ACT Tech fellows in our firm, and it's just a really special place to be.
Awesome. Thank you. So there's path number one, right? We took a stab at an online posting that got us with a recruiter. Sometimes we're kind of scared to work with recruiters. We don't know how it works. Adia would be a great person to talk to about that path. It worked out for her. She ended up where she had cold emailed anyways, right? So that's awesome. All right, Butch, take it away.
So I'm gonna talk about what pushed me to be in this practice area period, and then I'll talk about the practical like timeline of how I got to where I am. Uh, so my grandmother always wanted me to be a lawyer. Her family in the old country were lawyers, and in America they worked in and eventually owned some scrap yards. So from lawyers to junkyards. Um, and she wanted my son, or her son, my dad, to be a lawyer, and he is. But well, one time I was like 11 years old and I used to work in his office and I'd work in the front and I'd answer the phone and check the schedule and a client would come in and I'd go and tell him. So one day I'm hanging out and I'm playing solitaire on Windows 98 and I see on the schedule that John Doe is coming in and for context, the slang for a person accused of a assault against a child is a chimo, a child molester. So I know what he's charged with, and I go down the long green carpet to my dad's office, and I say, "Hey, Dad, there's a chimo on the schedule. Um, should I go work in the back?" And he's sitting at his big mahogany desk, and he's working, and he doesn't even look up. He just goes, "No, you're way too old for him." To his 11-year-old daughter. And I grew up thinking that was law. That's what it meant to be a lawyer. And that was the nail in the coffin for criminal defense. But his mom kept telling me I'd be a great lawyer. I should be a lawyer. And I made it through sophomore year of college being like, no, I'm not doing that. You're crazy. And she got sick. So I went down to Florida, God's waiting room, and spent some time with her. And at one point, we were in an extended care facility, and there were residents who were asking me to contact their children for them. And there were people asking me to fudge paperwork to give them autonomy over their health care because they hadn't gotten it in place before they lost competence. And Grandma Siegel said a lawyer could help these people. You could be a lawyer who helps these people. So I went to law school. And I'd been to North Carolina as a kid, and I wanted to go far enough north that I could vote in a purple state and stay far enough south that there was still good sweet tea. So North Carolina it was. And Grandma Siegel said that she wanted to see me graduate. She was 90 years old, so I did a little bit of math there. You know, it was as little as you can as a lawyer. And I thought, oh, well, the accelerated program at Elon would probably be a great idea. And she always said she was too old to buy green bananas, but I think she was just waiting because she died on the morning of my first law school exam. She's like, ah, you can't get out of it now. Now you're good. Now you're done. You're in there. So she passed away, and I think she was just making sure that I was really going to do it. And I did. So another little thorn in the rose of this was that it was during COVID. So I was a 2L during the first COVID shutdown. There were no internships, there were no networking events, there were no opportunities to connect with a professor between classes or drop in during office hours. There was nothing. And my first work as an attorney was representing tenants against predatory landlords during COVID. So there were a lot of landlords trying to take advantage of COVID to kick people out of their homes, especially Section 8. And I worked with legal aid to do that. And then in my downtime, as a way to fill what I felt was empty time on my resume, I did volunteer work online. So there was an effort from different research groups in North Carolina and Georgia to transcribe old records from human trafficking in the colonial era up through records of slavery and enslavement and then indentured servitude uh, up through like the 1900s. And so I would spend my time volunteering transcribing that. Uh, and I was lucky enough to find my wife during this time. And I was getting offers, but they weren't opportunities to help people the way that I wanted to. And my wife at the time, she was working in cancer. She's a nurse. And then she moved to cancer research. And now, this tells you how good of a person she is. That's why I'm saying it. Now she spends her days fighting insurance companies to make sure that they pay for patients' care. And she spends the other half of her days talking to doctors and being like, no, no, you can't do that or the insurance won't pay for it. So she was so supportive and she was like, no, no, you should hold out. And I sent resume after resume. And finally, I came across one on Indeed. Halfway through the description, in print smaller than any other part, there was a small instruction that said that you need to upload a writing sample via Google Docs and share it with him. I got an interview the next day, and then I got hired as an associate because out of 240 applicants that he'd received in 48 hours, I was the only person to read and follow that direction. So for 3 years, I got to work with event planners. We had conferences in Vegas, so I'm definitely not a Vegas person, but I found that out because if you go to bed at 9, people don't understand. But uh, I got to work with all kinds of interesting people, and all the while I got to build up an arsenal of resources for my estate planning practice. I was finding different templates. I was reading as much as I could, preparing to launch my own firm. Um, and I got to connect with some very interesting groups, and I now get to be a paid consultant for groups that I cannot disclose more of at the moment. But it's a great opportunity to connect with people, all because I read the tiny print in the middle of a job description. So last summer, I got to launch Butch Law, and it has taken off. I mean, we're doing great. The lady who runs the Center for Practice Management, which I'll plug again later, she said that she now uses my website to show other law firms what they should be doing. I mean, it was good. It's good. So that's how I got to where I am.
That's awesome. So, yes, you've heard it here first, folks. Butch hung their own shingle, which is huge. That is something I've never even considered endeavoring to do. And it's worked out really well so far. And so, super proud of them. And again, a path that we didn't think, is going to be where you start in estate planning, right? Event planning, estate planning, they both say planning, but that's not really a connected field. But you can always leverage the opportunities where you are to get to where you need to be if you just keep that focus. So that's something that I think is a big takeaway from Butch's story. All right, Campbell, take us away.
Well, yes, so I kind of got my start. It goes the whole way back to high school. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. First generation lawyer, like most people here, right? Lawyer was kind of a bad term in our household, right? I think I had a distant cousin that had done it. But I went to high school and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just know that college was the next step because that's logical, right? And so when applying, I chose Campbell University, went to their undergrad. But I had this like goofy teacher. He was like really cool. His name was Mr. Osney. Went back and uh, tutored and was a adjunct during his time there. But the whole class was business law, but we'd learn like these terms, right? We'd learn like textbook terms, and it was a very easy kind of open book. You couldn't fail the class. He just wanted to tell us about what he used to sell computers as big as the rooms, and he'd be on like USSR subs, and I'm like, Mr. Austin, I don't think this is relevant, but hey. And then he'd let us play finance games, so that kind of piqued my interest. And when I went to undergrad, I was like, I guess I'm gonna be like Mr. Austin. I'm gonna do business, right? I'm gonna do business, and I took business law. And there was a professor there named Jimmy Witherspoon or James Witherspoon at Campbell, and he offered probably the quickest way to influence me in any sort of way. He offered me a free dinner, right? He's like, "Hey, you want a steak dinner?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, that's great." And during that dinner, he talked about the Trust and Wealth program at Campbell. And that changed my life forever. At that point, I became part of the trust mafia, as they call it. We all get like little pins, right? Got to kiss the ring, and it's a joke, but there's not any bad things going on. It's just a very deep network of people across multiple banks across the nation that come out of this program. And I was blessed to be given that opportunity, as well as teach the Southeastern Trust School which I think they've changed the name now. It's the Trust Education Foundation School during the summer. And I was like, this trust stuff, that's kind of cool, right? What is this? And during my time there, I interned for Wells Fargo out in Seattle, Washington with their REAM group, their real estate asset management group, which assists high net worth or Abbott Downing clients in $35 million liquid plus state profiles. I got to work with First Citizens Bank, both on the private wealth side in the trust special services. There you go, Laura. So I saw your I saw your comment there. But trust special services and institutional trust, both with Philip Strickland and Carrie Garrity, and that was an interesting kind of influence of two different sides of the same coin, right? Trust special services works with estate administration, which is primarily what I do now. And they help most of their fiduciary or corporate trustees. So when someone names a bank and they pass and they act as their trustee, you work at administering their estate on as a corporate fiduciary, so as First Citizens. And then the institutional trust side with Philip Strickland and his team was really cool because I got to work with making businesses compliant with retirement trusts, IRAs, 401ks, making sure it was FINRA, all the federal regulations, a lot more acronyms that I've probably named. This was around like Reg BI, so everybody was really worried about terms, which was kind of funny. And then I got into my last year. I also played football there, so I was like, man, I'd like to stay around one more year, right? Like, what do they say? Student first, athlete second, right? That's what they do it. But the I decided to take another year and I get my MBA because I was like, I got this trust thing. I can do my MBA. I'll go work for the banks. That's perfectly fine. And then something just kind of clicked inside. I kind of saw that there was a little bit more to this, right? I could service, be more at the client level, be at the customer level, and be more interacting with those that create the documents or have recently passed and are enacting the documents before it gets to, TAC review board, TAC review, and compliance with the comptroller currency and the bankers, right? So I was like, heck, I'll go to law school. Why not, right? So I applied, and much to Mr. Witherspoon's dismay, I got licensed, passed the bar, and during that time, I stayed there for my MTWIM. But during that time, for Citizens Welcome Me Back, Demi Arsenault was really great in kind of bringing that full round connection of like, hey, we know you're in law school, but one more chance. Can you maybe consider this? We'll bring you on as attorney. And I was like, oh, thanks. But I don't know. Let me do a 180 and go to family law. So there's a very large practice in the eastern state of this, Western state. I had to draw the compass in my head, but Western state, Western part of the state that primarily practices family law, some litigation and estate, very small segment of estate planning and estate administration. And I was like, this is great, but I can see that I have no place in family law. So after that, I was like, I'll take this class called Estate Administration. We'll see how it goes. I didn't pay attention at all during it. Probate and estate administration, I was like, this is boring. This is awful. Who would ever do this? And turns out, like I said, that's my full-time job now. So I probably should have paid a little bit more attention to Professor Davies' class. But I got out, and it's my second semester of 3L year, and I have no leads. Every kind of reference that I had was built inside the banks internally, and I didn't want to go there. My previous work experience, they had either closed up shop or they wanted to hire me for family law, and I didn't want to do that. And so I was kind of stuck. And I'm going into the second semester of my 3L year right before I study and take the bar. And I'm like, well, I got bigger fish to fry. I should probably be studying for this bar thing. So I took a risk. I had nobody, I had nothing. And I, much like Adia, didn't cold call. I kind of cold personed, if that's a term. But I printed out the nicest paper that Staples had at the time, really, really nice cardstock, right? And like a resume cover, had all my experiences, references, big bold face, some sort of Times New Roman font. And I had like 3 or 4 of them. And I basically drew a circle around the map, and I looked at every estate planning firm within a comfortable commute radius from my house at the time in Apex. And I just walked in. I put on a 3-piece suit, I just walked in and a lot of stares, a lot of like, who are you? What are you doing here? I'm like, hey, you don't know me. I hope you will, but here's my resume. I'd really like a job. I'll work for free. I'm still a law school student here. Usually when you mention free, they like that. And nobody bit. Nobody responded back to me. Nobody emailed me. And then I kind of was like, well, I'll study for the bar. And then about a month after I don't even want to know what you call it, like stunt. Uh, Maggie Wells, our firm administrator here, she reached out to me, and it turned out they needed an emergency kind of hire for the Camp Lejeune mass tort stuff. So our firm services a lot of the estates for the mass tort lawsuits that happen for Camp Lejeune in and around the area. And I was like, sure, sign me up. And then, of course, I got brought on as a law clerk. They were happy with my work, so it turned into a paid position, part-time paid position. And then I'm getting closer to the end of the year, and I'm like, hey, I think there's different ways we can do this stuff, that we can be a little bit more efficient here and there. And they're like, you have a lot of good ideas. And I was like, they're really not, but I appreciate it. And they were like, would you like to come on contingent as a paralegal if you don't pass, and as an associate attorney if you do pass? And I was like, boy, would I ever, because I don't have anything after this. And I've been here ever since, not because of lack of decision, but because it's a great firm. It's a bunch of wonderful people. And the one kind of thing that they believe in here is that authenticity and honesty over everything else. It's not it's not like other places, right? It's truly a community. It's not, we're not all family. It's not like that corporate, right? Jargon. It actually is true, and you believe it. And I feel like I'm doing good. So that's kind of how I got to this point.
Wonderful. Yes, agreed. Cary Estate Planning is a great place to work. But yeah, so again, another path, right? Someone that actually knew kind of in undergrad what kind of law might be a good fit. And that's really cool. And to see the shift from the private sector on the finance side over towards the legal side of things, I think is another good path. And once again, unabashedly, three-piece suit, handing out resumes. I mean, sure, the job posting might say 5+ years, but who's going to do that, right? So that was awesome. So, and it worked out in Campbell's favor. So we've touched on some of this so far, but if each of you could just briefly kind of share what are any particular challenges that you overcame when you were going through this process. And then in addition to that, what was the best and worst advice that you received while you were navigating all of this? And again, ABC.
So I will say they're kind of the hardest thing that I had to overcome during that law school transition into the workforce was certainly finding that initial job. I think trust and estates is kind of a unique practice area if you're wanting to go into it. And a lot of time it's or maybe an older generation that's working in it. They might not know how they feel about hiring someone new, or maybe they just want to do their practice and then shut their doors. But it's a practice area that really needs new people coming into it, and so I think that's like an interesting situation. And so I knew that I wanted to do trust and estates or estate planning whenever I was in my 3L year at that point, and so I was looking for jobs that were kind of exclusively like estate planning, business adjacent, tax law adjacent kind of things. And so I had to, cold email a bunch of firms because I was in Texas. I couldn't pound the concrete kind of thing. But that was really hard because you get a lot of rejections or a lot of no responses. And so I think that was just something that I had to overcome and just bet on myself and hold out for a position during that kind of law school transition. Now, the hardest thing that I've had to deal with since being in practice was probably just kind of dealing with being a first year associate and the stress that comes along with that. At my first firm, I got kind of thrown into some really complex transactions and estate planning tax issues and stuff right from the beginning. And I learned so much, and I'm so thankful for how much I learned through that process. However, it really took a toll on me in that it was really overwhelming as a first year associate who had no experience previously pretty much with tax law. And so I was kind of like knee deep in the fire and trying to play catch up. And I would go home and just be like completely overwhelmed and exhausted and feeling like I did a terrible job. And like life sucks basically. So it just was a rough time. And the worst piece of advice I got during that time was someone at the firm just told me to work harder. And that was the worst piece of advice someone could have given me because I was already working really hard. And, I think they were partly talking about maybe my billing, but I was a new associate. Billing's hard. It's something you learn. And I was losing a lot of hours that I could have billed, but I didn't know how to properly build, so I lost that time. And so I was working as hard as I could, and I was going home and I was crying and I was stressed, and it was just awful. And being told to work harder from someone like me who's type A perfectionist, already like giving it 100% all the time was just devastating because the kind of to me, the subliminal messaging there was you're not enough and you're just not contributing enough. And so at that point I was like, oh man, I picked the wrong profession. I should have went to vet school. I made a mistake. I don't know what I'm doing in law. I hate it. I hate this. And so I was like seriously like kind of thinking about exit strategies, but I knew that I need to pay off my student loans. So I was going to practice for a couple more years. I was like, I'll transition to a different firm, and try that. And then, if that doesn't work, I'll just work as long as I need to pay off my student loans, and then I can like jump ship on law if I need to. So that's when I kind of started, applying for other positions. I ended up at this firm here in Charlotte, and it was a completely different experience from the start. My work-life balance from the beginning, was just better. They told me up front, for the first 3 months, you probably aren't going to meet 7.5 hours a day, which is something eventually you might want to meet. But that's okay because we budgeted for you to not hit those metrics because we recognize that it's a ramp up period and we want to ease you into this transition because starting in a new place is hard. Being a new lawyer is hard, and learning how this firm does things is hard. And so all of those things, we're going to give you like some grace, and we're going to kind of ease you into this process. And so that was huge. That made such a huge difference because it instantly made me feel like I was supported in a different way. And then I was able to kind of ease into it. And I've had a ramp up period. And so my workload has gotten more and more heavy. And there are days where I'm like stressed still, but it feels different now because I'm supported in a different way. I'm surrounded by people who have a lot of the similar like mindset and goals as me. And I just feel more supported. And one of the best pieces of advice I would say is whenever I was trying to figure out like if I could get this job at Johnson Allison Horde or not, whatever, was I smart enough? I had some people kind of doubt whether this would be a right fit for me, if this was something that I could take on because, they have the big law kind of name, or North Carolina big law name. You say that you're stressed about working so much, but you're going to work at big law. You're going to be working even more. But that really hasn't been the case for me. In fact, they've just taught me how to make sure I'm capturing all of my time. And so when I work 7.5 hours, I'm able to bill close to that. And so they have like put in the resources to make me more efficient and effective. And so I'm working the same amount of time, probably maybe even less, and stressing about it a heck of a lot less. and putting out even better quality work because I feel supported and have that work-life balance that I need. And so my piece of advice is when you're down in the trenches and you're like doubting yourself, doubting your profession, try another place of work because it makes such a huge difference in your outlook on your job. But best piece of advice was bet on yourself. Someone told me that whenever I had some people be like, I just don't know, like it's gonna be a really steep learning curve for you if you go there. I bet on myself and it paid off. I won big bucks. So yeah, that's my advice.
Awesome. I love it. Butch, your turn.
So I think I talked about the challenges that I faced a little bit, so I'm gonna go right into the advice part. Um, I think the best advice that I got was that if you do what everyone else is doing, then the best that you could get is what they already have. And it goes hand in hand to me with the worst advice that I got, which was that's just how it's done. Uh, and I got an offer from a lady who wanted me to step into her dead husband's shoes at this little law firm doing traffic law. And she said, "You don't even have to come into the office. The secretaries will do all the work, and you just need to sign your name. And that's it. We just need someone with a license to sign their name." So I called the state bar from the car. I did not get home before I had the ethical helpline on the phone. Um, and she was just very much like, "Well, that's how everyone does it. That's how it's done." And I thought, well, if that's how it's done, I don't want to do it that way. And I think that that's true for situations beyond just clear ethical violations. God, that was gross. Excuse me. Um, but I think I didn't want to do it the way that other people did, and I still don't. Bush Law isn't doing what other law firms are doing, and I think it's why we're successful because we found certain pain points, and it's matched perfectly with the life that I want to have as an attorney. I don't want to work 50 hours a week. I want to spend time with my wife and outside. I want to drive around and help people in their homes. So Butch Law has flat fees. You know what you're going to pay, and we're flexible. You can pay me with the canoe that's sitting under your deck. You got a gold coin sitting around, let's do it. Hey, I need some landscaping done. You know, I'm more open to alternative forms of payment like that. I'll come to people in their homes. There's a lot of people that need estate planning that it's hard to get out of the house, you know? I mean, I've gone to extended care facilities and I've had people have to sign with a mark because their hand is so gnarled from age and arthritis that they can't hold the pen. And becoming more conscious of dementia capability within estate planning's been great. And I wouldn't be doing that work if I was doing what other people are doing, and if I accepted that that's just how it's done. So I got to go outside and feed cows today. I get to be on a panel right now, and I'm writing articles for some magazines in North Carolina to help queer old people get access to healthcare because this is the first time that we have old married gay people. I mean, that's crazy. That's so cool that I get to be part of that and serving that generation. So I think it's important to focus on your story and not let yourself be too informed by the story of others. Like it, you can do things your way, and you don't have to imitate what everyone else is doing to be successful. Oh, Queerolina. So Queerolina, and then the Guilford Green newsletter. and there will be more coming out. There's a few podcasts that I've been asked to speak on, but we're working out what that looks like because, I have to balance. I don't want to be giving advice because I can't do that. And I have to help people understand, okay, hey, I'm going to give you the information. You need to talk to a lawyer, and here's why. I usually phrase it as you have to be able to sue a lawyer who gives you bad information and bad advice. And if we don't have a contract, it's harder for you to sue me if I give you bad advice. And that helps them. That helps people get like, oh, okay, no, 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 I really do have to hire my own lawyer. But yeah, you'll see lots more from Butch Law, and always you can always follow Butch Law. And you can see the baby cows. I was showing them at the beginning of this on my Instagram. But Queerolina is a big place, and then Guilford Green Foundation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Butch. Campbell, go ahead.
Well, it's gonna sound relatively the same, the information because they have Adia and Butch they've just covered an insane amount of ground, and you kind of start to see a theme come together. I put a sticky note over the light sensor because I like to work in the dark. Thank you, Michael. So I'm sorry about that. I should have I've learned my lesson now on this. So the worst advice was put a sticky note on your sensor that no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, the worst advice, I'll start off with that because that's the best, is and the sun. Wow, I chose a really bad spot. But the worst advice was kind of like ideas, right? So all throughout law school and undergrad actually, since I started college, I was a football player at a larger school, right? A Division I school. I was a cashier, worked my way up to a manager at a retail pharmaceutical chain. I did all that. I was an RA. I did a bunch of stuff. So like type A, right? Like I got to do everything. Sleep is not a priority, right? I was part of the One Love Foundation on our campus, given a lot of good advice. And during my third year of law school, I think it was, one of our professors, brilliant man, is going to stay nameless, because I think this was just a moment of weakness for him, inherently. But the things that he said in that moment of weakness has stuck to me forever and has kind of scarred me. Kind of like I don't know if you guys are familiar with that the show Monsters Inc., right? When the little Boo is behind the corner and Kitty or Sully is he's screaming because Mr. Waternoose wants him to scream, right? But it scars Kitty. It scars the child forever. And so I think that's the part of this story that's the most important is the harsh words that you can say in a moment might not. So we weren't hitting metrics, right? We weren't hitting a correct grade or whatever it was. And he comes in, he's very big law coded from the Northeast, really great man, very smart, very brilliant. Is, very, very passionate man. And he comes in and he's like, "You guys feeling good about yourselves?" And we're like, "Yeah, yeah, what's going on? Like, we're having fun, right? It's great. It's a great day." We're in, a certain class that we're all having. It was very relaxed. It was like 18 people. And he like tightens his lips, right? He has his Burberry scarf on with his sweater vest and tweed jacket, right? And he's got like this little styrofoam cup. And he's like, he's just walking around. He's like, "I'm not happy." And it was like immediately the mood shifted. And the advice he gave us was he said we weren't doing good enough. We hadn't hit our metric. He's like, "If you guys don't have enough time in the day, then I don't feel sorry for you. If you don't have enough time in the day, you just need to do better, be better, and get up earlier." And with each of those enunciations, he would stomp on the floor at us. And in that moment, I was Boo, right? I was like, "What? You used to be such a safe person. What's going on?" So along with Adia's kind of story is, if anybody ever tells you to work harder and you know that you're working because you're the biggest judge of that, you can kindly take their opinions and place them wherever you want to put them because that's not cool. We're all professionals here. We all work very hard, and we've taken our lives seriously. So don't ever let anybody second guess you or second doubt you, because you are great and impressive with the way that you're doing stuff. There's no need to kind of change who you are, if that makes sense. The best piece of advice, I kind of alluded to it earlier. Paul here he likes us to be very open and honest and authentically us. We have core tenets and is like, let your freak flag fly. Like just be you. Don't ever bottle yourself up to meet a standard that he or anybody else thinks that you have. And so that's kind of dovetailing into the best piece of advice. And just throughout that whole time, while the bad advice that I did receive does make sense, yes, you can make more time. You can lose sleep. You can sacrifice social, get, health, and you can sacrifice your mental health. It's not worth it. And so those are sometimes the biggest roadblocks we face coming into this industry. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, we have about 9 minutes left. So let's do a quick, just like round robin. If there's anything specific that the three of you would say, take 30 seconds. Hey, you should check out this book or this resource, or if there's anything. If there's not, you're good. But just so everybody knows on the call, we are kind of trying to curate like a little Google Doc of resources that we're going to try to send out to you guys sometime in the next week or so after we've got our list of attendees. But for right now, if there's any plugs that, the three of you would like to make for a helpful resource or, group to join, let's do that now. And then at about 12:55, we'll open it up for questions if there's anybody watching that's got something on their mind.
So I popped some in the chat. You as law students, you'll never have the access to all of the information through your law school library that you have right now ever again in your career. You have access to practice guides and all kinds of libguides and resources that you won't have later. Take advantage of it and use that. The North Carolina Bar Association Center for Practice Management through Catherine Sanders Reach. Amazing. Also, get an old laptop hard drive. If you have an old laptop, take out the hard drive, get yourself an external hard drive reader, and just use it as a bank of resources. Throw articles in there. If you need something later on, you'll be glad that you have, oh gosh, I had a template for a contract for embroidery services at a corporate event, but it's an old machine. I had one. Like that's crazy. And then I'll be quick, I promise. But make friends with the people that your clients are going to ask for a referral. So be sure get in good with the leaders in those spaces, and then also you need to be normal with your clients. You don't have to peacock your law degree. They expect competence and they expect expertise. That's the floor. um, if you want to get ahead of every other competent expert lawyer with this client, they need to feel heard. You have to make sure that you understand their experience, their life, the choices that they are making. And your job is just to say, hey, I hear you. Here's the document where we make that choice. Here's where we put it. And here's who needs to know. That's all that you need to be doing for them. But they expect competence and expertise. What they need for you to be different from every other lawyer is to feel heard.
I couldn't have said it any better. I second everything that Butch said. I live and die by the state actions manual. It's not necessarily the best way to do things. It's the way that you won't get sued to do things. So I always tell people, especially when they're looking at stuff like that, start at the ground up. And then the one thing is the mentors. So one of the benefits of working not with a great group of people is we bounce off ideas off each other. And I did not create the styles or standards I have now. It's an amalgamation of every attorney I've ever worked with for my entire life, and it'll keep growing, it'll keep adapting. And then I eventually will get so old that I guess I stop listening to other people. Hopefully I don't. At that time it'll be big, white, bushy eyebrows and, white hair. But at that point, I will continue to grow and adapt.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, let's open up to questions. If there's anybody that has a question, you can either unmute and ask it, or you can pop in the chat. Don't be shy. Obviously, the whole goal of this was to be very candid and comfortable. So none of these people are scary if you have something on your mind. No questions? Oh, perfect. Okay, best advice for the first year of practice. That is a good question. Okay, who wants to tackle that first? Because that is a doozy of a year, y'all.
Yeah, I can Adia has a better story of how to I feel like we're in the, whatever that I can't remember, but it doesn't matter. Sorry, I get distracted easily, as you can tell. But yeah, I feel like I was just picking up on that, but Adia said it best earlier about drinking from a fire hose, right? You're not going to know everything, as much as you think you do, and when you pass the bar, congratulations, you know a lot about nothing. You that's it's not a, it's not a negative thing to think of, but it's the obviously, congratulations, you did a great job, you're at the next step, you should be very proud of yourself and celebrate that. But there is a little bit of ego that plays into that that you could probably kill within yourself. Wear the term baby attorney as a crown of achievement because you've made it to the next step. And sometimes you use it as an excuse, right? It's like I'm just a baby attorney. I don't know what I'm doing. But with that, take every opportunity. So the best advice is reduce, like, yes, you did great, you passed the bar, you did a lot, you did something that a lot of people don't do, but you also know nothing, and then absorb everything like a sponge. Question nothing unless it is signing people's names for a law firm, right? But question nothing and always be willing to volunteer. That's the quickest way to the proverbial perfection or top, right? Is just be like, hey, I need someone. Me, it's pushing a broom. Dang it. Well, I'll still do it. Uh, it's shredding these documents, and while you're shredding the documents, you kind of review what they are. But that's kind of the best piece of advice for me.
I agree. And I think I would also say too, in your first year of practice, I haven't met anybody that said that their first year of practice was like smooth sailing and that they felt so assured in the career path they chose and everything like that. So that's just to say all of us have felt like that. Sometimes when you're working at firms, the older folks will have forgotten, but they felt like that too. And so it's just one of those things to just know it's part of the solidarity of this career. But you will get through it and lean on other people around you. Never be afraid to ask questions. And Campbell's right. Jump at opportunities as they come up, and just, if you hit a wall, do not sit there in silence and wait for it to crumble around you. Ask for help. That is expected, and also welcomed, as I would say, having trained law clerks myself. Like, please always, never be afraid to ask for advice there, and just, you can do this. First year, worst year, you'll get through it, and the more you learn, each year does get easier, because you just get more self-assured. So
I would say because you're out of the classroom, you're tempted to stop taking notes. Don't make that mistake. You need to take notes. Otherwise, you will be trying to do something like, I know I've done this 3 times, but I forgot that one part. And you're starting over. It's like you never did it before because you're doing so many new things. So take a lot of notes. Obviously, make sure that you're doing it in a safe way as far as client information. But it is better to keep taking notes because you're in just a different kind of classroom now.
yes, that is so true. I take notes all the time, even from conversations with colleagues, right? Oh, that was a good insight. I asked Campbell a probate question the other day. And I made a note so that next time if I have a question again, I know exactly what I'm going to write on this one particular form with a loan. So we are at our 1 o'clock hour. So I want to be sensitive to everybody's time. But I really appreciate everyone joining us today. All of us are more than willing and eager to talk to you guys. So if anybody wants to shoot us emails or anything like that, I'm going to work to get the list of everyone who attended here. And I'll send you guys the resources that we've kind of tried to put together for you. And then, of course, our emails. So, coffee, emails, texts, whatever. This is now part of your estate planning community to get through year 1 and year 20 of practice. So, anything that you've got, welcome to the estate planning family here. So, thank you guys so much.